Yeah, so we're going to talk about The Mandalorian. We talked about the first episode, actually on our last episode. So we're going to be talking about episode 2 of The Mandalorian. Um, I well, let's start with you, Eric. What did you think of the second episode?
Well, I just want to point out I have the Rotten Tomato meter up right now. The critics are currently at 89% for their the tomato meter. Audience scores at 94%. I think that says a lot about this show because those are pretty close. Sometimes you see quite a divide between the two of those things. Um, so, gosh, I have a lot of thoughts about the Mandalorian. Honestly, it's kind of one of those things where, like I was telling you, I kind of have to kind of gather my thoughts a little bit because we got so into the to our other topic. But I have a lot of thoughts. Why don't we just kind of start at the beginning? I mean,
Okay.
so the way that the show starts out, it starts out exactly where we left off, right? So
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 should we put up a spoiler alert? So this will
are
be
there
a
any
spoiler.
spoilers in this? Are there any real spoilers in this episode? That's another thing. I don't think Mandalorian is really a spoiler show. I mean, at
Yeah.
least not so far. I mean, is it really a spoiler? Anything that we're going to say that's going to kind of. I think that
Well, we're
I
if
think the
we're gonna
Mandalorian in a lot of ways is more about the ride than it is about
right,
about what's
but
actually going on. Because I'm trying to think, was there anything in it that really had any huge implications?
well, all I was going to talk about, if we're going to talk about it in any great detail, and if someone still hasn't watched it, which I don't know why you haven't watched it, but if anyone hasn't watched it yet, we're gonna be talking about the show in some detail, and it could or could not, depending upon your point of view, be considered a spoiler.
Well, in terms of general, not even touching spoiler type stuff, I would say, a lot of the stuff I said before still holds. I mean, the cinematography is very good. The way it's filmed, the quality of the show, I think, is very good. I am still having issues with Disney Plus. I should have mentioned that in our streaming war subject uh, uh, segment. I am still having issues with Disney Plus on my PlayStation 4. I'm still getting a lot of freezing and things like that are annoying the heck out of me. Um, to the point where it's almost hard to enjoy the episode. And this episode was very short. It was only like 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, it was definitely a short episode. It was
It was
about
like 30 minutes with credits. So it's
yeah,
more like
yeah.
25 minutes.
Yeah, it reminded me of, for those people that have watched Cobra Kai on YouTube, because some episodes of Cobra Kai are a lot longer and some of them are quite short. It reminded me of that, and it's like whatever they need to tell the story. It seemed like that's all they were doing. They weren't really looking at making. I mean, maybe they are going to have all the episodes after the pilot, hit a 30-minute mark. Maybe that's what they're looking at. I don't know. We won't know until the next episode hits and we actually get a chance to watch it, which will be this Friday. But no, it was 30 minutes. But we have yet to see like if every single one's going to be 30 minutes or if it was just this particular story. They felt like they only needed 30 minutes to tell the tale in.
Right. And I do see why it's a short episode based on what happened. Um, I mean, it got to the point where it's kind of like, all right, this is mostly filler. I did explain, I guess there was one big spoiler worthy thing that happened, but for the most part, I felt it was just kind of like a side adventure. It has very little to do with I think what the overall story is going to be. I think it's more just like it was kind of like a little side quest, you know, because it didn't really contribute, I think, to uh, the overall uh, the overall direction of where the show is going in terms of the story. I think it told us a lot about the tone, which I still find a little bit uneven. By the way, I still think the tone is a little uneven. Um, so I think sometimes this show doesn't know exactly what it wants to be. I think it's trying to go for a lot of different things. And again, I kind of compare it to Marvel. Marvel tries to be kind of all things to all people, but I think they can get away with it a little bit more because these are comic book movies. So I think with a comic book movie, you can do that a little bit more than Star Wars can. I mean, like I said in my last review, I'm not saying that there isn't a place for humor in Star Wars, but I always felt the humor in Star Wars was a little, I don't know, it's a little less cheesy than what you see in the Marvel movies traditionally. Not in this show though. This show, I think it's very much Marvel humor, Marvel Cinematic Universe humor.
Right, I could see that. So are you saying that I mean, did you like it or did you not like it?
Well, I'll say this.
I imagine the streaming difficulties alone, it makes it hard to like.
Yeah, that's a huge contribution to how I feel about. Well, it is a contribution to how I feel about the show to a certain extent because I'm still able to enjoy it.
Right.
I will say after the first episode, I think that one of the best things, one of the best criteria for this show is that when this show first came out, anybody watching it was watching it for free. The free trial was still going, and the free trial was still going for episode 2 for everybody. Okay,
right.
So these were free episodes. Watching the first episode, I was not ready to keep my subscription going and pay. I just was like, yeah, you have not sold me on this show. And I said, I'm glad I get to see another episode before I make this decision about whether I'm going to pay for this thing or not. And I will say the second episode intrigued me enough that I'm like, yeah, I want to see what's going to happen next. I'm going to fork my money over to Disney Plus because I want to see what's going to happen next. And it's all because of Baby Yoda, which is not a spoiler if you saw the first episode. We all know Baby Yoda's there.
Right.
So that was the big revelation, episode 1. So, but Baby Yoda stole the show, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I am right on board. I'm ready to go buy myself a Baby Yoda.
So for myself, I'm going to be honest. I mean, was it a bit of a side adventure? Yes, but I thoroughly enjoyed the hell out of episode 2. It felt more like Star Wars to me than even the first one did. And in a sense, it was, I felt like it was a better episode than the pilot too. I know that, we're just following, I don't know. There was just something about this one that just felt like classic Star Wars. I don't know if it was the Jawas or.
I was going to say the Jawas.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this one. I mean, this episode was so much fun. And, I love the whole thing of him trying to climb up the side of the sound crawler and they're throwing stuff down on him. And the fact that he stripped his ship. Like when I saw that and I saw it was Jawas, I was immediately smiling. I thought that was hilarious. And that's kind of natural Star Wars humor. You know what I mean? That's not like a forced joke. Like I just thought that you know what I mean? I was just like, of course they're stripping his ship. It makes you wonder what planet we're on, but that's another discussion. But no, I honestly, I thoroughly enjoyed the second episode, and I was already on board for the ride because I quite enjoyed the first one, and this one to me felt more like just Star Wars. The pilot to me felt like a live action animated Clone Wars episode. This one just felt like Star Wars to me. Everything about it just felt like Star Wars.
You don't think it still kind of feels like a little bit of a live action cartoon?
Yes, it does, but I think it does that in a good way for me anyway. The original comment was maybe a little bit meant to be a little bit more, I guess let's say judgmental, and I referred to the other one as a Clone Wars episode, but this one just felt like fun Star Wars to me. I really, really like this one. No, but just overall, I really enjoyed it, and my wife actually also really enjoyed it too. We are actually watching and enjoying the show together, which is fun for the two of us. You know what I mean? To have something we're enjoying, and she's been very interested in more about Star Wars. So she'll be on her phone, like trying to research like Yoda's species, like try to learn more about Baby Yoda, and it's been fun for us, and the second episode I think really hooked both of us in a pretty big way. I thoroughly loved the second episode. I just really, really enjoyed it. I I mean, I can see the criticism. I can lay into it if I want to, but I'm going to be honest with you. Overall, I liked it so much. I'm just going to say it's a big thumbs up for me on the second episode of The Mandalorian. It was just a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. So,
yeah, I have to say also, watching it with my kids, not all my kids had seen the first episode. So some of them watched the first episode with me, and to be honest, it seemed like they got a little bit bored. They got through it okay, and then at the end they were like, "Yeah, it's okay, Dad." But they loved the second episode. they were watching it. They were into
and it. You know
and there's only one reason why. All about Baby Yoda. It's all about Baby Yoda.
Yeah, Baby Yoda is terribly compelling, but I'm going to mention this, and because I found it interesting. You remember the all silent episode or issue of G.I. Joe, right?
I think I have it.
Yes, the Snake Eyes one, and it's almost the whole issue is like basically silent, except they think for like
the one with all the ninjas. The
yes.
ninjas are attacked. Yeah, I own it. I have that. It's in my collection.
This episode to me, because there wasn't as much dialogue, felt like a Star Wars like execution of that idea. Because when it first starts off, there's not a lot of talking. You know what I mean? It's mostly just him reacting, and it reminded me of that in some ways. So,
well, also again, Baby Yoda contributes to that because Baby Yoda doesn't talk. So one thing that I really enjoyed about this, I really like this because I watched it more than once. And one of the things that's really cool is if you're kind of just looking in the background, there's always something going on with Baby Yoda. Like, where's Baby Yoda right now? What is Baby Yoda doing? And I loved that. Like that very first scene when they're in the canyon. Okay, when they're just like it's like the opening scene, and we get to see that Baby Yoda is still in the little pod.
Right.
The thing that I love is Baby Yoda is sitting upright, and it's looking around. It's like looking back and forth, and you can see its kind of reactions as it's kind of like taking in the scene.
Right.
In other words, it's not really acting like a baby. It's acting more like I guess an infant or a young child.
Right.
And I really like that because if Baby Yoda had been like a true baby and just completely helpless and all that stuff, I think it could have. I think it definitely would have ruined the episode. I think
yeah.
Because if you especially if you watch the episode more than once, you kind of notice that like in every frame, Baby Yoda's kind of doing something. Like Baby Yoda's always kind of like in a different place or kind of moving around or reacting to things and looking at everything. And I was just like, they did a really good job of making that character like alive, actually acting like a real person. And that to me was just it's beyond cute for one thing, but it's also like a great attention to detail that they don't just. You can tell, like you can almost tell that somebody on set was like constantly telling them, "This is where Baby Yoda's supposed to be." Like even if my understanding is they do have an animatronic. I don't know how much of it's animatronic and how much is CGI. My understanding is there is an animatronic, but I don't know if it's in every scene. So, but especially when Yoda's moving, I'm sure that's CGI. Right. But apparently there is a Yoda animatronic. So. Like I said, I don't think it's in every scene, but I think they're always kind of saying, "Where's Baby Yoda?" And they make sure that they know when they're aware at all times that Baby Yoda is going to be somewhere in this scene. There's very few scenes that it wasn't in, and I am saying it because I don't know for sure what gender it is. I still think it might be a girl, but there was nothing in this episode that really gave us a definitive answer on that. I don't think.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think we're both in agreement then. Like I said, I thoroughly loved this second episode. And it definitely sold me like on the series in a pretty big way. And it did some things I was kind of surprised by. I mean, I guess I was surprised by how much I liked it. But by the time the Mandalorian got to the top of the sandcrawlers and the Jawas shot him and he fell back down to the ground, I was just like, yeah, this is pretty. I'm digging this. This is fun. So big recommendation for me to definitely check out the Mandalorian because we'll see what the third episode's like. I would like to continue to cover this on the show if that sounds good to you, Eric, as we get new episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I have committed to it, so that's at least 1 month because at this point you can't. Once you're charged, you're committed for the month.
Right.
So, so yeah, I definitely do want to see more of this. I still have some issues with it. So when we get into the deep dive a little bit and kind of go through this, so as with anything Star Wars, there are always lore implications when you introduce characters like this. The Mandalorian himself is obviously based on Boba Fett, and the character of Baby Yoda is obviously based on Yoda. And I think that's kind of interesting when you get into the lore and the lore implications of the show, and also sort of what they're trying to do with this. Because when you talk about I've had this issue from the beginning that sometimes this doesn't sit right with me. Like I've made the point, why isn't this Boba Fett? I made the point, why wasn't that IG-88? And I'll make the other point of why wasn't one of those reptiles Bosk? See what I'm saying?
Right.
Those kinds of things do irritate me a little bit. I did think that the fight with the Bosk aliens was cool. I thought that was done very well. It was a cool scene. It also established sort of kind of reminded the viewers that there is apparently another faction that just wants Baby Yoda dead.
Right.
Because now we have technically 4 bounty hunters, because I think there was 3 of them, right? There were 3 of the reptiles and IG. So we have 4 bounty hunters that have been hired to kill Baby Yoda, straight up.
Right.
Where the Mandalorian was told, preferably to bring Yoda alive. If he killed him, he better have solid proof that he killed him.
Right.
So, and that's one interesting thing too, because I think a lot of people are kind of smitten with the idea. I think you've talked about the lone wolf and cub idea that the Mandalorian is kind of protecting Yoda.
Right.
But at the same time, we don't really know for sure if he is, because he was told the preference was to bring Yoda alive.
Right.
So we don't really know 100% yet what the Mandalorian's motivations are in regards to the child. Now, I think at this point, the relationship might have changed. And that might, like I said, that might be the big story implication going forward, is that the relationship might have changed from where he might have been at the beginning of the episode. Because I think at the beginning of the episode, he's possibly just thinking, this is what the client asked for. I'm going to do everything the client asked for to the best of my ability. And one of the things that I think is funny is how much danger he placed the Baby Yoda in.
Right.
There was a hashtag saying that the Mandalorian is the worst babysitter ever. And I totally agree with that, because it's just kind of funny. When he actually takes Baby Yoda with him to get the egg, right. I was just like, why is he doing that? Now, obviously there's a payoff to why he does that for the story. Right. But in terms of just logic, it's why would you take a baby with you when you're going to go fight this rhino beast?
Right.
And you were talking about the chase sequence earlier, which a lot of people are comparing to. They said it's very Indiana Jones, and I can feel that the chase scene when he's going after the sandcrawler.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of funny because you got to be looking. The little Baby Yoda is just following him along in the pod.
Yeah.
During the whole scene, and I thought that was really funny. So yeah, I mean, I can't. I mean, the Mandalorian, I don't know, but Baby Yoda, let's just give him his own show and let's just do that. I love Baby Yoda. I mean, I can't get enough of Baby Yoda, and I talked about before in terms of the lore issues. I'm not someone that's really sold on this idea that Yoda is so powerful because his whole race is force sensitive. I don't really like that idea. I know a lot of people have just kind of conceded that. I do have some issues if that's the case, but I think it comes down to, what is your theory about who Baby Yoda really is, because we're calling him Baby Yoda because that's what everybody else is calling him. But who is this creature really? I mean, what's your theory on who Baby Yoda actually is and his implication to the wider story of the show?
Well, um, hmm. I've seen some speculation that some people have said that when you look at Baby Yoda's age and you look at the time in which Yoda actually sort of well, how do I put this? Well, there's some people that put forth the theory that basically when Yoda kind of went off the playing map, so to speak, after the events of Revenge of the Sith and everything, that the Force kind of needed another entity to kind of fulfill that void. And now that the character's emerging, it's because Yoda has passed. Because Yoda would have died basically in Return of the Jedi, which these events are happening after, right?
Yeah, five years after.
Right. So, in terms of what his implications are in terms of the lore, I do think he's intended to be there to be a Force user in a similar way in which Yoda was. Um, I don't think it's Yoda, obviously, because Yoda just passed, so it's not like Yoda's consciousness went into it. I don't think. I mean, it's possible. Um, but I just think that the Force intends for this character to fulfill the role that Yoda fulfilled until the time that he passed. I think it's sort of like a successor kind of idea. But the big difference is the universe is completely different. And I'm not sure if this character is even going to get that opportunity because if we look at the later movies, there is no Yoda-like character representing the Jedi or the light side of the Force or anything, right? Playing any kind of role anywhere. So I'm not even sure if the child will make it through the show, to be honest. I'm not even sure. But I do like the idea that with Yoda's passing and this creature's emergence, I do think that the Force intends for this being maybe to represent the Force in some extent in the way in which Yoda did, would be my best guess right now.
So,
what do you think?
well, the one of my kids had the theory that this is Yoda's child. This is a child from Yoda.
And I've heard that too.
And in terms of the timing, that makes a lot of sense because essentially Baby Yoda is the same age as Anakin. They're about the same age. So I think Yoda would be a little bit younger, but they're about the same age. So if you do the math, so actually I think Yoda might be almost exactly the same age as Anakin, because you're talking about what, like a 20-year gap between Revenge of the Sith and the first Star Wars,
Right.
and then there was a 10-year gap between Episode 1 and Episode 2,
Right.
something like that. So if you kind of do the math, it's like that kind of figures. So the question becomes, again, who is this child? This child is apparently 50 years old. That would place them in the Episode 1 era, as far as when they were born. That makes the clone thing kind of problematic. There is the clone theory that this is Yoda's clone. But at the same time, I pointed out because one of my kids loves Attack of the Clones, and I pointed out that we never really got the whole story on Sifo-Dyas and the cloners of Nino and how that whole situation came to pass. As far as I know, we never got an explanation of that, of what Sifo-Dyas's actual motivation was, because there's a theory that Sifo-Dyas was that he foresaw this big war coming, and he decided to go and do something about it because he knew the Jedi wouldn't really do anything about it, and he decided to kind of do it on his own. And then the Chancellor, later Emperor, the Sith, basically found out about it and killed him and took over his plan. There's a theory out there that says that. The other theory says that he was kind of like in league, or he was manipulated by the Sith from the beginning. But we don't know. We just know that cloning was involved around that era when this child was made. So it could be Yoda's clone. It certainly would kind of coincide with the beginnings of the cloning of the clone army.
Right.
So there's a lot that could be explored with the lore here. Like we could potentially get like some sort of definitive answer on what Sifo Dyas was doing and all that stuff. But I don't know if that's what they're going to go. Like I said, one of my kids thinks it's just straight up it's Yoda's kid, which of course says, well, who's the mom? Which I'm not. Are you familiar with Yaddle?
Yes, I am.
So that could be an obvious theory right there that Yaddle and Yoda had a kid. I mean, I think that'd be kind of a fairly easy one almost. But I'm not sure. I'm really not sure who this child is yet. I'm still not convinced that it's not a girl. Which if it was a girl and a clone, then it could be kind of a Logan thing, you know?
Right.
Which would be I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly what I want to see. It could be interesting, especially the way it's playing out. But it's also interesting to me that we know that there's two different factions that have two different ideas here. Clearly, one faction, the one that hired the Mandalorian, I think wants to experiment on the child.
Sure.
Some people that determined that the scientist he's a cloner. He has the Camino symbol on him. He's a cloner. And so that lends credence to him being a clone or them wanting to clone him. I'm just saying him because I don't know if it's him or her yet. But it could be that they want to clone this child. But then there's also a faction that just wants him dead. So it's kind of interesting because going forward, we'll probably get a lot more information as far as why one side wants to do this and one side wants to do that. One of the big questions that people are asking is this going to have implications for the rise of Skywalker and the reemergence of the Emperor? Is this going to be an integral part of that to give us some insight into how that happened, how the Emperor is back? Because a lot of people are assuming the Emperor is a clone, right?
Right.
That the Emperor is going to be a clone. So it could have something to do with that. Like I think we even touched on the battery theory, that essentially they're going to use Baby Yoda like a kind of the way that they do it in Dark Crystal, right? Where they kind of just drain the Gelflings of their essence and then kind of use it. And I could kind of see a scenario like that where they're looking to use the Baby Yoda, which, like I said, that there's only one big, huge spoiler, I think, in this episode, and I'll give the spoiler alert right now, and that is that, yes, this Baby Yoda can use the Force. And is quite powerful in the use of the Force. The Baby Yoda was able to lift that rhino creature, and that's something that Luke couldn't do, even as he was starting to train. So clearly, Baby Yoda is very powerful in the Force, although limited. Baby Yoda essentially collapsed after doing that. So the powers of Baby Yoda are probably still developing, but still this is not a helpless child. This Baby Yoda actually has some pretty substantial Force powers. So I'm not exactly sure which way to even try to commit at this point. The other theory, of course, is that this child has nothing to do with Yoda other than the fact that it's the same race. And that kind of goes back to the argument that, well, every Yoda, for lack of a better term, because we don't know the name of the race, that every Yoda is Force sensitive and Force powerful. There's kind of that theory too, that they're just all like that. They're just all super powerful, which again, I don't really like that, but that doesn't mean that's not where they're going with it. That that's not what's going to happen. And they're just going to say, yeah, all of Yoda's people are like that. They're all Force sensitive. They're all powerful. Other than the same race, this child has nothing to do with Yoda. But because of the cloner, because people have established that the cloner, that there's a cloner involved, I tend to think that they either want to clone it or it is a clone.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Well, like I said, my only theory is that, like I said, that I think the child has a larger role to fulfill in service of the Force. But what that is, I think we won't find out um, unless as the show unfolds. And like I said too, I believe there's a possibility the child will not make it through the show. At least if my theory is correct, because the child is clearly nowhere to be seen in the later films. So
Yeah, although we still have one film to go, and remember you had the theory before that Baby Yoda is going to be the battery in the
yeah,
Emperor's Spider Machine. You know, he's going to be running
it could
around.
be the battery in the Spider Machine. It could. It could.
You know, so
I don't want to see it happen to Baby Yoda, but I could see that. I could totally see that.
yeah, that I think a
You're to
lot of
watch.
fans. I think a lot of fans would be pissed off if that happened. So I tend to think that's not what they're going to do.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing I want to touch on too is when we were kind of just shooting ideas from the last episode. There is this possibility. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is this possibility that that Luke or agents of Luke are running around looking for younglings, and clearly Baby Yoda would probably be in that category, even though
Right.
it's technically 50 years old. It's still apparently a child, and I say apparently because just because Baby Yoda isn't talking doesn't mean that Baby Yoda can't talk. So I do want to kind of throw that out there too. We don't really know the full abilities of this creature because, for instance, I was pointing out to my kids when we were talking about it, it's like, well, Baby Yoda can hunt. Baby Yoda went and got that frog and ate it, which everybody thinks is adorable. But it's like
Right.
babies can't do that. Babies can't go out and like get an animal and eat it. They're helpless. They can't do stuff like that. Somebody
Right.
has to feed them. Baby Yoda's walking around a lot. Baby Yoda. One of the first scenes that I really liked was after the fight with the boss aliens. Baby Yoda clearly is trying to heal the Mandalorian from his wounds, and it's very clear that's what Baby Yoda is trying to do. But Baby Yoda keeps crawling out of the pod to do
Right.
that and keeps walking up to him, and I thought that was just, yeah, that's just too cute. But the thing is, it shows that the baby is not as helpless as you might think, because it was able to get out of the pod. It is able to walk around. It's able to do quite a few things. So it becomes a question of how truly helpless is this being. But we assume it's supposed to be sort of a child. If that's the case, there is this scenario where, if not Luke himself, Luke may have at this point recruited people that are trying to look for younglings, trying to look for potential recruits for the new Jedi Academy. And because we know there was a new Jedi Academy and we know it was destroyed
Right.
by the Knights of Ren,
Right.
there's this scenario, which I thought was intriguing, even though I think you meant it as a joke. I think it's actually intriguing if they went here. It could be a scenario where Baby Yoda ends up just being one of the Padawans, one of the numerous whatever point Luke was at, the numerous members of the Jedi Academy that's slaughtered by the Knights of Ren, and that's why we don't see
Yeah.
it.
Well, and like I said, I can only imagine how people would lose their minds if, like, as we get towards, like I said last episode, we get towards the end of the Mandalorian. Maybe it's in the last episode. The Mandalorian's trying to protect the Baby Yoda. It doesn't look like things are going to go very well. They seal themselves behind this bulkhead, and you hear the lightsaber sounds, and then the door opens, and then Luke steps in, but we don't see him. We just see his cloak. We see the lightsaber. You know what I mean? We
Right.
hear the Luke theme, and he picks the child up and then basically takes it to take it to the temple. You know what I mean? To train and protect this child, right? And we get this swelling Luke theme, and we never even see him. We just see the back of his cloak, or we see the green lightsaber blade. You know what I mean? Like, and I thought about it too, because you talked about how, would he thank the Mandalorian or whatever for what he did? And the more I thought about it, I think he would acknowledge the Mandalorian. I think Luke would, but I also think the Mandalorian too, by that point in the story, if he's traveled around with his child and thinks it has some important, significant role to play, he'd probably be thankful that the child was in Luke's care, of course, not realizing that, the Knights of Ren are going to wipe him out. You know what I mean? I I mean, to end the show on a cliffhanger moment like that would be pretty amazing. So, but we'll see. We'll see what they have planned. Like I said, I just thoroughly enjoyed the second episode.
Well, the other thing that I know you just kind of threw out there was what if Ahsoka comes in like the last frame and
Yeah,
the
could be
Yoda
Ahsoka
baby?
too.
We have no idea what's going on with Ahsoka. She's not referenced in any of the live action films at all. So would this be the time to bring her in and show that there's something else going on with her? That there is another, even though she's not technically a Jedi, she pretty much is. So it's like
I would so explain what Ahsoka has been doing. If she's been protecting and helping, train and raise this child like a servant of the Force. You know what I mean?
like
And
Obi-Wan. I mean,
yeah,
it's just
and
like Obi-Wan.
yeah, and maybe there is a new Jedi that could emerge later on that kind of comes from Ahsoka and her working with this baby Yoda. I mean, all I can think of is like, man, they could have made some really cool movies just spitballing out of this. I mean, but no, yeah, that would be amazing too. I would love if Ahsoka also, took the child and was protecting it. That would be amazing too.
Yeah, we'll just have to see where they decide to go. Right now, I'm thinking the next big revelation we're going to get is we might get some inkling of what the other faction is. I think we already have an inkling of what the guys that hired the Mandalorian, what they want. I think we have an inkling of that, but we don't really know who or why this other faction just wants Baby Yoda dead. And I think maybe
Right.
we'll get an inkling of that, and we'll probably get a better solidified view of what the original faction wants, the one that hired the Mandalorian. I think we'll pretty much know what they're after in this next episode. And I'm hoping and I'm thinking we're going to get an inkling of what the other faction is and why they want him dead. So that'll be interesting because I want to see that. I want to see. I mentioned that before. I do see this series going in a direction where the Mandalorian is going to have some conflict of interest. He's already got 3 players here. He's got the guild, which he's already killed multiple guild members. Don't forget that. He's killed multiple guild members at this point of the Bounty Hunters Guild. He has his clan, the other Mandalorians, and then he has his client. So there's already three masters, if you will. And I'm already seeing that I think a conflict is building up, that there's going to be an issue with these different factions that he's affiliated with.
Right, I could see that. Yeah, for sure.
So that'll be interesting. I think that I'm hoping that's going to play out. I hope that's going to be a good reveal as far as who this other faction is that we haven't seen yet and why they want the baby dead.
Right.
Because it could be like a twist. It could be that's the Rebel Alliance. Maybe the Rebel Alliance hired him. Who knows? Something. Now that would be a crazy twist if that's what we found out. Because we have not seen any inkling of the Alliance. We've seen an inkling of the remnants of the Empire. We haven't seen anything from the Alliance yet. Anything from the New Republic or anything like that.
Right.
So we'll see.
Cool. Is that good for the Mandalorian review?
Yeah, I think so.